You won't believe how a simple sentence from the boy next door managed to stop me in my tracks and shift the course of my entire day, and maybe even the way I see people. Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts or story in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. Now, before I begin, tell me, where are you watching from? I'd love to know which cities and towns are joining me for this memory that stayed with me for years. It was one of those mornings where everything felt a little too quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't sit right with you. The air was cool, heavy with the smell of last night's rain, and the street still glistened with leftover puddles reflecting gray skies. I just finished sweeping off my porch. The maple leaves never stopped coming in October, and was on my second cup of coffee, lukewarm and a bit too strong. The breeze tugged at the hem of my robe, and I pulled it tighter around me, half out of habit, half out of comfort. That's when I saw him. Ethan. My neighbor's boy. 11, maybe 12. Slender, always with a backpack that looked too big for his narrow shoulders. He walked past my house every morning like clockwork, always alone. Sometimes he'd wave if we made eye contact, sometimes not. This time, he stopped. I noticed him staring at the cracked edge of my walkway. Just standing there, his brows furrowed like the concrete was trying to tell him something. Morning, I called out gently, careful not to startle him. He looked up and smiled, small, hesitant. Hi, he said, then paused. Do you live alone? I blinked. Not the usual good morning conversation starter, but something in his tone was different. Not nosy, curious, soft, like it had taken him courage to ask. I do, I said, leaning against the porch railing. Why'd you ask? He kicked at a pebble on the sidewalk, shoulders tensing. I always see you out here. You always look kind of quiet. There was a stillness in me then, like the air paused. Well, I like the quiet, I replied, trying to keep it light, but I could feel my heart tugging in a way I wasn't expecting. Some days more than others. He nodded, looking at his shoes, then back at me. My mom says quiet people have the loudest hearts. I don't know why, but that did something to me. I hadn't expected that kind of sentence from a kid still missing a front tooth. I just stood there, blinking back the lump rising in my throat. That's very wise of your mom, I said, voice a little scratchier than I meant it to be. She cries when she waters her plants, he added, matter-of-factly. She says it helps them grow better. I didn't know whether to smile or cry, so I just nodded. Ethan adjusted the straps of his backpack and gave a small shrug. I think you look like someone who would cry while watering plants. And with that, he turned and kept walking down the street, as if he hadn't just cracked open a part of me I hadn't touched in a long time. I watched him go, my hand still on the railing, the wood suddenly feeling warm beneath my fingers. I hadn't cried while watering my plants, but maybe I would. Maybe I should. There was something about that moment, that boy, the way he said what he said without any shame or awkwardness, just honesty. Gentle honesty. The kind we lose as adults when we get too busy, too afraid, too tired to say what's on our minds. I stood there for a long time after he disappeared around the corner, coffee forgotten. The leaves had stopped rustling. Even the wind seemed to be waiting. That was the morning Ethan changed my day, without even trying to. And I knew that wouldn't be the last time. The next morning came with the same gray light spilling through my kitchen window, filtered through the thinning maple branches outside. Autumn had always been my favorite season, maybe because things felt like they were slowing down, getting softer, or maybe because it gave me permission to do the same. I moved through my morning with a kind of quiet awareness. Something about what Ethan had said the day before had followed me like a forgotten melody I couldn't shake. You look like someone who would cry while watering plants. I'd even repeated it to myself while rinsing dishes the night before, like I was trying to figure out if that was a compliment or a gentle nudge to feel something more deeply. This time, I stepped onto the porch a few minutes earlier, coffee in hand. I was hoping, though I didn't fully admit it to myself, to catch him on his way to school again. Not because I had anything in particular to say, but because I realized how rare it was for someone to speak so plainly, so purely, and not expect anything in return. Sure enough, there he was. Same backpack. Same slightly too big coat zipped up to his chin. He was kicking a pine cone along the sidewalk like it was a game. I called out, "Morning, Ethan." He looked up, grinned. "Hey." He slowed down near the same crack in the walkway and stopped again, like we had an unspoken agreement this was our spot now. "You always drink coffee?" he asked. "Pretty much every morning." "Why?" I laughed, sipping. "To wake up, mostly. But sometimes it's more about the comfort than the caffeine." He nodded thoughtfully. "My mom says she drinks coffee to feel like a grown-up, but she still eats cereal out of a mug." That made me smile in a way that reached all the way to my eyes. "She sounds like someone I'd like," I said. "She's kinda sad," he replied, then added quickly, "but she's really good at pretending not to be." I was quiet for a beat, trying to decide how to respond. I didn't want to ask too much, didn't want to push. "That's a hard thing to carry," I finally said. He shrugged. "I think people carry all kinds of stuff. Some just hide it better." We stood in silence for a moment, the kind that didn't feel awkward, just real. Like neither of us needed to fill it. Then he reached into his backpack and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I drew something yesterday, after I talked to you." I stepped down from the porch, curious. He handed me the paper with both hands like it was fragile. It was a drawing done in pencil. A porch, a woman in a robe holding a mug, leaves scattered around her feet, and a boy looking up at her with a small smile. The detail wasn't perfect, but the feeling was. It wasn't just a sketch, it was a memory. Ours. I held the drawing gently. "This is beautiful, Ethan." He smiled, proud but bashful. "I like remembering things with pictures. Feels like they stay longer that way." I nodded, my throat tight. "You've got a gift." He looked at his shoes again. "Thanks." Then he glanced up at me, a little more serious. "You seem less quiet today." And he was right. I felt lighter, just a little, like someone had opened a window in a stuffy room. "Maybe it's because someone saw me yesterday," I said. His smile widened, and with a simple, "See you tomorrow," he walked off again, pine cone forgotten. I stood there, holding that drawing like it was a postcard from a version of myself I hadn't seen in years. The kind of self that feels things fully, notices the small kindnesses, and slows down long enough to let people in, even little ones with big eyes and even bigger truths. That morning, the world didn't feel quite so quiet. Or maybe I just wasn't anymore. The next few mornings settled into something gentle, almost ritualistic. I'd step out onto the porch with my coffee, always a few minutes early, and Ethan would come walking down the street, backpack swaying, jacket flapping open now that the weather had turned a bit warmer. He'd pause at the same spot near the crack in the walkway, and we'd talk. Nothing complicated. Sometimes he asked questions that caught me off guard. Sometimes he just told me odd little facts he'd learned in school. Like how butterflies can't see their own wings. "Isn't that kind of sad?" He said one morning, squinting up at the sky, "that they don't know how beautiful they are I'd looked at him, then nodded slowly. Maybe they don't need to know. Maybe it's enough that others see them. He just shrugged, thoughtful as always, and started talking about how he wanted to be a scientist, but also maybe an artist. It had become the sweetest part of my day, those 5 or 6 minutes with him. Strange, how that small window of time could leave such a large impression on my heart. But on the 5th morning, he didn't come. I stayed out on the porch long after the usual time, my coffee gone cold, watching the street with an ache I hadn't expected. The silence felt louder than it had in a long time. I told myself maybe he was sick, or maybe running late. Kids miss school sometimes. It didn't mean anything. Still, something in me felt unsettled. That evening, I was trimming back the dead stems from my flower pots when I heard the soft click of the gate opening. I turned to see Ethan stepping into my yard, head down, his backpack missing. "Hey," he said, voice quiet. "Hey, stranger," I replied, brushing dirt off my hands. I missed my conversation partner this morning. He walked up the porch steps slowly. "I didn't go to school today." I nodded, stepping aside so he could sit on the top step. He looked small without the backpack, his knees pulled up to his chest. "Everything all right?" I asked gently. He didn't answer right away. Then, after a moment, he said, "Mom cried a lot last night. I think I made her sad." My heart clenched. "She found the drawing," he went on. "The one I gave you. I had scanned it on her printer before I gave it to you. She asked why I drew it, why I talked to you." I sat beside him, giving him space, but close enough that he knew I was really there. "What did you tell her?" "That you're nice," he said, "and quiet, and you listen." I smiled faintly. Not a bad list. "She asked me not to bother you." Those words landed like a weight on my chest. Not because I was angry, but because I could hear the fear behind them. The kind of fear that grows in the cracks of grief and worry and single parenting, and maybe a life that didn't turn out the way someone thought it would. "You're not bothering me, Ethan. Not even a little." He looked up at me, his eyes wet but steady. "She's just tired all the time. She works nights now. She tries hard. But sometimes I think she's scared of anything she can't explain." That was something I understood more than I wanted to admit. Sometimes, when life throws you curveballs, you stop trusting even the good things. "I think your mom's doing her best," I said gently. "And I think you are too." He nodded, resting his chin on his knees. "I won't stop talking to you," he said, "even if I have to do it secretly." I chuckled softly. "Well, let's not get you in trouble. But tell her I said thank you for raising a boy who sees people." He didn't reply right away, just leaned into the quiet between us. After a while, he stood up, brushing off his pants. "Do you think butterflies miss their wings when they're gone?" I looked at him for a moment before answering. "No," I said. "I think they spend their time flying, not worrying about what's behind them." He nodded, then gave me a small smile, the kind that barely lifts the corners but says more than words. "See you tomorrow?" "I hope so," I said, truly meaning it. As he walked away, the gate clicking closed behind him, I felt that same weight from earlier shift. Not gone, but different. Like maybe we were both learning how to carry things a little better, with words, with drawings, with quiet company on porch steps. And maybe that was enough. The next morning, I was on the porch before the sun had even finished rising. The light came in soft streaks of pink and gold, stretching across the quiet street like nature itself was tiptoeing. I'd made an extra cup of coffee, just in case. I didn't know if he'd come, but I hoped. The maple tree had lost most of its leaves by now. My flower pots were half empty, cleaned and trimmed for the winter ahead. Still, there was something alive in the air, a quiet expectation. At exactly 7:32, I saw him. Ethan. Backpack on, jacket zipped, one hand holding what looked like a folded-up paper bag. He was walking slower than usual, his eyes scanning the porch like he was checking if it was safe to hope. When our eyes met, I raised the spare cup slightly and smiled. He walked up the steps without saying a word and sat beside me, close but not crowding. After a few seconds, he handed me the paper bag. "I made you something," he said. "It's not good, but it's real." Inside was a peanut butter sandwich, cut in half, wrapped carefully in wax paper. Next to it, a folded napkin with a small drawing in pencil. This time, of 2 mugs sitting side by side, steam curling up from them like twin vines. My throat tightened again. I was getting used to that. "Thank you," I said honestly. "It's perfect." We sat like that, eating quietly, watching the street begin to wake up. After a few bites, he asked, "Do you ever miss having someone around? Like, in your house?" I glanced at him. The question was innocent, but there was something deeper tucked behind it. "I do," I said. "Some days more than others. I used to think being alone made me strong. But sometimes it just makes me quieter." He nodded. "My mom says quiet people can hear things others miss." I smiled. Maybe that's true. But sometimes we need someone to speak into that quiet too. He didn't say anything for a while. Then, in a smaller voice, he said, "I told her I'd still talk to you. I didn't ask. I just told her." I looked at him, the way his chin set in that quiet, determined way. "And what did she say?" "She cried," he said. "But then she said, maybe she was wrong. She said maybe it's okay if someone else listens to me when she can't." Tears welled in my eyes before I could stop them. I turned away a bit, pretending to sip my coffee. "I think she's brave," I said. He nodded. "She tries really hard." Then, almost shyly, he reached into his backpack and pulled out a small notebook, worn, pages folded at the corners. He held it out. "I write stuff," he said. "Thoughts. Like how birds look lonely in the rain, or how people forget to look up when the leaves fall." I took the notebook, flipping gently through the pages. His handwriting was uneven but full of thought. Tiny poems, observations, bits of wisdom wrapped in childlike wonder. "You're a writer," I said. "No," he said quickly, shaking his head. "Yes," I said firmly. "You are." He didn't argue again, just let the idea sit between us. As the school bus rumbled down the street, he stood up slowly, looking reluctant. "Will you keep the notebook for a while?" he asked. "Just in case." "In case of what?" "In case I forget who I am." I stood, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. "You won't, but I'll keep it safe anyway." He nodded, then started down the steps. Right before reaching the sidewalk, he turned back. "You know," he said, "you don't look quiet anymore." I smiled. "That's because someone helped me find my voice again." He gave a small wave, then walked toward the bus stop, leaving a trail of gold and red leaves in his wake. And as I stood there, holding a sandwich, a notebook, and more emotion than I knew what to do with, I realized something. Some days, the world doesn't need grand gestures or dramatic changes. Sometimes it just needs 2 people, one learning to speak, the other learning to listen. And in that quiet corner of the world, on a little porch tucked between falling leaves and forgotten cracks in the sidewalk, Something had grown, not loudly, but deeply, and it stayed.